Get Agrippa reality. I am Amy Rossi, and this is the Void Experiment. Picture this. A man in the 1500s, no telescopes, no quantum mechanics, no computers, somehow figures out the fundamental architecture of reality before modern physics even has the language to describe it. He writes it all down in excruciating detail, gives you the exact protocols to test it yourself, and then gets chased across Europe and accused of heresy for his trouble. His name was Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa von Nettesheim, soldier, physician, lawyer, theologian, and, according to the Church, dangerous heretic who consorted with demons. His crime? Writing 3 books of occult philosophy, the most comprehensive manual for consciousness engineering ever produced in the Western tradition. Today we're going to explore his framework, map it onto modern physics, and show you why a 500-year-old magic book might be more scientifically accurate than you've been led to believe. By the end of this episode, you'll understand why reality has 3 interpenetrating layers and how they interact, how consciousness generates matter rather than emerging from it, what Agrippa knew that materialist science is just now rediscovering, and how to start testing this yourself. Welcome to Get Agrippa Reality. Let's begin. Part 1. Who was Agrippa, and why should you care? Agrippa lived one hell of a life between 1486 and 1535. Born in Cologne, Germany, he died broke and disgraced in Grenoble, France, on the run from the Inquisition. But between those dates, he packed in more than most people could accomplish in 3 lifetimes. He fought as a soldier in the Italian Wars, studied at the University of Cologne, where he mastered 7 languages, practiced medicine across Europe, served as a legal advocate, and worked as court advisor to various nobles and royalty. He was deeply versed in Christian, Jewish, and Islamic traditions, and most importantly, he became the great synthesizer of every occult tradition available in Renaissance Europe. Agrippa studied everything: Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, the Tree of Life, Hebrew letter magic, Hermeticism, Egyptian wisdom attributed to Hermes Trismegistus, Neoplatonism, Plato's philosophy filtered through a mystical lens, astrology, with its planetary influences and celestial timing, alchemy and its transformation of matter and consciousness, Christian theology with its angels, demons, and divine hierarchy, natural magic and working with elemental forces. In 1533, he published all of it, everything he'd learned from decades of study and practice, in 3 books of occult philosophy. 3 books, 3 worlds, a complete system. The Church was not pleased. He was accused of heresy for teaching magic that contradicted church doctrine, necromancy for communicating with the dead, demon worship for invoking spirits, and spreading dangerous knowledge that empowered people to work outside church authority. He had to flee multiple cities. His books were condemned. He died in poverty. But the books survived. And for 500 years, people who actually read them, instead of just condemning them, discovered something fascinating. They work, not as superstition, not as metaphor, as operational protocols for interfacing with consciousness and reality at levels most people don't perceive. Modern materialist science dismissed Agrippa as primitive pre-scientific thinking, claiming he didn't understand physics, so he invented magic to explain things. But what if he understood something physics is only now catching up to? What if his 3 worlds map perfectly onto quantum mechanics, with its observer effect, non-locality, and consciousness involvement? The holographic principle with its information encoding on boundaries and consciousness. First models of reality where awareness generates matter rather than emerging from it? Let's find out. Part 2, the 3 worlds. Agrippa's entire system rests on one core principle. Reality has 3 interpenetrating layers, each influencing the others. The first is the elemental world, The mundus elementaris. This is physical reality as you experience it. Matter, energy. The stuff you can touch and measure. It's composed of 4 elements. Earth representing solid, stable, dense qualities. Water representing fluid, adaptive, flowing qualities. Air representing gaseous, mobile, communicative qualities. And fire representing energetic, transformative, active qualities. These aren't literal earth, water, air, and fire. They're qualities of material existence, solidity, fluidity, movement, and transformation. Everything physical is some combination of these elemental qualities. Your body, mostly water in its fluidity, some earth in bones and structure, air in breath and movement, fire in metabolism and heat, a storm, air in wind, water in rain, fire in lightning, earth in impact on ground. The elemental world is where consciousness localizes into observable form. In our framework from previous episodes, this is M, matter and mass, the material vessel where consciousness manifests. The second layer is the celestial world, the mundus caelestis. This is the realm of planetary and stellar influences, the patterns and forces that organize the elemental world. This isn't physical astronomy, though that's related. The celestial world is the realm of organizing principles. The 7 classical planets known in Agrippa's time each carry specific frequencies. Saturn governs structure, limitation, time, and death. Jupiter governs expansion, abundance, law, and fortune. Mars governs action, conflict, courage, and force. The Sun governs vitality, consciousness, authority, and life. Venus governs love, beauty, harmony, and attraction. Mercury governs communication, intellect, speed, and mediation. The Moon governs emotion, intuition, cycles, and reflection. Each planet isn't just a physical object. It's a consciousness frequency, a specific pattern of influence that affects how the elemental world organizes. When Mercury is loud or strong in influence, communication flows easily, ideas connect rapidly, information transmits clearly. When Saturn dominates, structure matters, limitations appear, time feels heavy, things crystallize or die. The celestial world is the intermediate layer, not pure consciousness, which comes next, and not pure matter, which is elemental, but the organizing patterns that consciousness uses to shape matter. In our framework, this is the coherence field psi and time density field Rho sub t, the mathematical structures that determine how consciousness localizes and how time flows. The third layer is the intellectual world, the mundus intellectualis. This is pure consciousness, divine intelligence, angelic hierarchies, the source from which everything emanates. Agrippa maps this onto 9 orders of angels, seraphim, cherubim, thrones, dominions, virtues, powers, principalities, archangels, and angels, along with divine names representing aspects of God or infinite consciousness, and pure ideas like Platonic forms and archetypal patterns. This isn't physical. It's not even energetic in the material sense. It's pure awareness, pure intelligence, pure information, before it manifests into any form. The intellectual world doesn't exist in space or time. It's the substrate from which space and time emerge. In our framework, this is phi, void consciousness, the undifferentiated awareness that all experience arises from. Here's the key insight. These 3 worlds aren't separate. They're the same reality at different levels of manifestation. The intellectual world, as consciousness flows into the celestial world as organizing patterns, which flows into the elemental world as matter. Consciousness generates patterns which generate matter, not bottom up, where matter creates complexity, which creates consciousness. Top down, where consciousness creates organization, which manifests as matter. This is what materialist science got backwards, and what quantum mechanics is awkwardly rediscovering with the observer effect and measurement problem. Agrippa had it right 500 years ago. Part 3. How the three worlds interact. So reality has three layers. Why does that matter practically? Because if you understand how the worlds interact, you can work with them deliberately, instead of being unconsciously subject to them. Downward causation flows from top to bottom. The intellectual world influences the celestial world as pure consciousness, angels, divine intelligence, establishes patterns. These patterns become planetary and stellar influences. Intention at the highest level shapes organizing principles. Then the celestial world influences the elemental world, as planetary patterns determine how matter organizes. Different times, like planetary hours, carry different influences. Physical reality reflects celestial organization. Here's an example. You have an intention at the intellectual level. You invoke Mercury energy at the celestial level, and communication improves in physical life at the elemental level. But you can also work from the elemental world upward through what I call upward recognition. Elemental practices affect celestial awareness through physical rituals, circles, candles, specific materials that create conditions attuning you to planetary influences. Matter shapes which patterns you perceive. Then celestial awareness affects intellectual connection, as understanding planetary patterns opens perception to angelic and divine intelligence. Organized consciousness connects to pure consciousness. For example, you perform ritual with specific materials and timing at the elemental level, align with Venus energy at the celestial level, and access love and harmony consciousness directly at the intellectual level. The real magic is in the correspondences, how specific things in the elemental world connect to specific influences in the celestial world and specific intelligences in the intellectual world. Agrippa catalogs thousands of these. For Saturn, the metal is lead, the day is Saturday, the color is black, the scent is myrrh, the stone is onyx, the plant is cypress, the angel is Cassiel, and it's used for structure, binding, protection, and endings. For Venus, the metal is copper, the day is Friday, the color is green, the scent is rose, the stone is emerald, the plant is myrtle, the angel is Haniel, and it's used for love, beauty, harmony, and attraction. These aren't arbitrary associations. They're resonance patterns, things that naturally vibrate at the same frequency. When you want to work with specific consciousness at the intellectual level, you invoke the organizing pattern at the celestial level, using materials that resonate with it at the elemental level. You're creating a complete circuit across all three worlds. Part 4. Modern physics catches up to Agrippa. Now let's map this onto what modern physics has discovered, often reluctantly. Take quantum mechanics and the observer effect. Measurement affects outcome. Consciousness isn't separate from physical reality. It's involved in determining what manifests. Agrippa said the intellectual world as consciousness shapes the elemental world as matter through celestial organizing patterns. Physics says observation collapses the wave function and consciousness influences, which potential becomes actual. Same thing, different language. The holographic principle states that all information in a volume is encoded on the boundary surface. Reality isn't just matter. It's information patterns that manifest as matter. Agrippa said the celestial world as patterns and information determines how the elemental world as matter organizes. Physics says the boundary encodes the bulk, and information structure determines physical manifestation. Again, same concept. Coherence field theory is cutting edge. Not yet mainstream, but gaining traction. It proposes that reality emerges from a consciousness coherence field, CSI interacting with a time density field, Arjo sub T. Different field configurations create different physical laws and different manifestations. Agrippa said different planetary influences, as celestial patterns create different conditions in the material world. Physics says different coherence field states create different physical outcomes. Agrippa described this 500 years before we had the math. Then there's the hard problem of consciousness. Materialist neuroscience can't explain how matter generates subjective experience, how body creates awareness. It can't because that's backwards. Agrippa said, consciousness as the intellectual is fundamental, and matter as the elemental emerges from it through organizing patterns as the celestial. Consciousness First Physics says, awareness doesn't emerge from complexity. Complexity emerges from awareness organizing itself into observable form. Agrippa solved the hard problem by never accepting the false premise in the first place. Part 5. How to start working with the three worlds. Theory is great, but Agrippa didn't write abstract philosophy. He wrote an operational manual. Here's how you actually start working with this system. First, understand which world you're addressing. Working in the elemental world means dealing with physical actions and material results, like health, wealth, relationships, and tangible outcomes. Your tools are herbs, stones, metals, and physical rituals. Working in the celestial world means dealing with timing, patterns, and influences, aligning with planetary energies. Your tools are astrological timing, planetary invocations, and understanding cycles. Working in the intellectual world means engaging with pure consciousness and divine intelligence, communicating directly with angelic hierarchies. Your tools are meditation, prayer, and invocation of divine names. Most effective magic works across all three simultaneously. Second, learn the correspondences. You don't need to memorize everything Agrippa catalogs. Start with the 7 planets and their basic qualities. Saturn for structure, time, and limitation. Jupiter for expansion, abundance, and law. Mars for action, courage, and conflict. The Sun for vitality, consciousness, and authority. Venus for love, beauty, and harmony. Mercury for communication, intellect, and speed. The Moon for emotion, intuition, and cycles. Learn a few key correspondences for each: the day of the week, the metal, the primary color, 1 or 2 associated stones and plants. This gives you enough to start creating aligned conditions. Third, test simple planetary work. Let's say you're invoking Mercury for communication. At the elemental level, you set up physical conditions. Work on Wednesday, Mercury's day. During the Mercury hour, using a planetary hours calculator, you can find free online. Use an orange or violet candle for Mercury colors, lavender incense for Mercury scent, and an agate stone for Mercury correspondence. At the celestial level, you invoke, I call upon the influence of Mercury, swift messenger, opener of pathways, clarifier of thought and speech, and state your specific intention about the communication you want to improve. At the intellectual level, you connect. I invoke Raphael, angel of Mercury, guide of travelers and bearer of divine messages. Grant clarity, speed, and eloquence. Then you sit in meditation for 10 to 15 minutes. Visualize Mercury as the liquid metal flowing through your throat and mind. Feel communication pathways opening. Thank the influences when done, and extinguish the candle. Then test. Does communication flow better that day? Do messages arrive clearly? Do conversations go smoothly? Document results? Adjust variables? Repeat? Fourth, understand you're not making things happen. This isn't about forcing reality to bend to your will through magic powers. It's about aligning yourself with influences that already exist, creating resonance between your consciousness and specific patterns, and opening perception to levels of reality you normally don't notice. The planetary influences are always operating. You're just tuning in deliberately instead of being unconsciously affected. Fifth, respect the hierarchy. Agrippa is very clear. Don't just jump straight to invoking high-level angelic intelligences if you haven't mastered the basics. Start with physical correspondences as elemental work, planetary timing as celestial awareness, and simple invocations as intellectual connection. Build competence gradually. high-level angel work, demon summoning, complex operations. Those require foundation. For your own safety, don't start there. Sixth, protect yourself. Anytime you're opening consciousness to non-ordinary perception, maintain boundaries. Have a clear beginning and end to practice so you don't leave yourself open. Work with specific intention, knowing what you're invoking and why. Use discernment, because not everything that responds is beneficial. Ground yourself afterward and return fully to ordinary consciousness. Traditional protection includes circle casting to create boundary between you and whatever you invoke, banishing rituals to clear space before and after, and divine name invocation to call on highest consciousness for protection. This isn't paranoia, it's good energetic hygiene. Part 6. Why this matters now? So why should you care about a 500-year-old magical system written by a guy who got chased across Europe for heresy? Because the knowledge works, and because mainstream institutions still suppress it, just less obviously than burning people. Modern materialist science dismisses consciousness as epiphenomenon, a useless byproduct of brain chemistry. This keeps people dependent on external authorities like doctors, scientists, and institutions to explain reality. It keeps them convinced they're powerless terminal bodies that emerged from Darwinian evolution and lack power. It renders them unable to work with consciousness directly for fear of public ridicule or suppression by mental health professionals. If you look back at how gifted people were treated in institutions like Trans-Allegheny Insane Asylum, where humans were lobotomized and tortured, you can see how this fear has taken hold of survival instinct in 2025. They don't want you to know the power you have. Jesus was crucified for preaching the truth. I understand your fear, but we must resist hundreds of years of economic control to center ourselves, our soul, and what consciousness knows to be real. If we want to survive the AI evolution and retain agency on what makes us human, we should understand this reality sooner than later. Agrippa's system says you're not powerless. Your consciousness interfacing with reality across multiple levels. Learn the architecture, and you can work with it deliberately. That's dangerous to control structures. Always has been. The church suppressed it because people who can contact divine intelligence directly don't need priests. Modern institutions suppress it through mockery rather than execution, because people who understand consciousness engineering don't need academic gatekeepers to validate knowledge, medical authorities to manage their awareness, or corporate and government systems to provide meaning and direction. Sovereign consciousness is ungovernable, and Agrippa's 3 books is a manual for developing exactly that. He paid the price: poverty, persecution, death, and disgrace. But the books survived. The knowledge persists. And now, with quantum physics accidentally validating what he described centuries ago, maybe it's time to take Renaissance magic seriously, as proto-science rather than dismiss it as superstition. We've covered Agrippa's life and why he matters, the 3 worlds as elemental, celestial, and intellectual, how they map onto consciousness-first physics, how to start working with planetary correspondences, and why this knowledge has been suppressed. In the next episode, we're going deep on planetary intelligence, the 7 classical planets, their specific influences, how to invoke them, and why Mercury being loud isn't just poetic language, but description of actual energetic reality. For now, try this. Pick one planet that resonates with what you need. Saturn, if you need structure and discipline. Jupiter, if you want expansion and abundance. Venus, if you're working on love and relationships. Mercury, if communication matters, whatever calls to you. Research its basic correspondences. Set up simple aligned conditions using day, color, and scent. Invoke it respectfully. See what happens. Document your results. Not to prove anything to anyone else, but to verify for yourself whether Agrippa's 500-year-old system actually interfaces with reality or not. Then come back for episode 2, and we'll go deeper. Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa died broke and disgraced, but he left you the manual. Time to see if it still works. If this resonates with you and you would like to dive deeper into esoteric knowledge, please consider subscribing to my channel. Leave a comment and engage. We need community in an age that is controlled by social media and separation. Thanks for listening. Warning: working with these systems can produce real effects. Proceed thoughtfully, protect yourself appropriately, and trust your own discernment over any external authority, including this one. I'm Amy Rossi, and this is the Void Experiment.